All right, students. Hello, all. I hope you are doing great. Welcome to the live streaming of the daily news analysis. And today we'll be understanding the important news articles of 30th July 2022. I'm your educator, Prithviraj Singh, and we here at ClatPrep cover all the important news articles of the Hindu and Indian Express. Let us begin with the session. Well, on the very front page of the Hindu, it was a news about the core sector output, which has seen a rise, which has seen an expansion, a rise by 12.7% as compared to the previous year, as compared to the same month in the previous year. Yes. So when here we are comparing June 2022 with June 2021. So in June 2021, the core sector was growing at 9.4%, and at June 2022, it grew at 12.7%. So in this way, it was a positive increase or a positive growth. At the same time, when we compare with the previous month of the present year, it is moderate, it is less, because the previous month, that is the month of May, the growth was 18.1%, and in June, the growth is 20.7%. Now, students, we must understand what is core sector. Now, see, there is an index to calculate the changes in the volume of production of industrial goods. See, students, whenever you are calculating the GDP, which is nothing but the total monetary value of the final goods and services produced within a country, right? And it includes the monetary value of all the industrial products, right? So therefore, there is an index called as index of industrial production, which is being used, to calculate, which helps in calculating the GDP. And IIP is being calculated by an agency, department of the government, Center for Statistical Office (CSO), and it works in the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation (MOSPI). Right now, there are core sectors, means the heavy sectors, and there are 8 sectors which are called as core sectors. Right. So all the 8 sectors like fertilizers, electricity, crude oil, cement, you know, natural gas. So there are 8 sectors which come in the category of core sector, and this actually comprises 40% of the index of industrial production, right? So if it is a positive growth in the core sector, it would contribute positively to the index of industrial production and henceforth the GDP, right? Now, we must understand that all sectors have shown a positive increase. If I talk about the core sector output growth of June 2022, except crude oil and steel. We know that after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there has been uptick in the increase in the price of the oil or the oil crisis, and therefore the oil sector or the crude oil sector has registered a negative trajectory. Right. Moving ahead. Uh, well, you can see as on the screen that the core sector constitutes 40% of the industrial production, which we just discussed. Now, these are the 8 sectors in the decreasing order of their weight. The maximum weight is that of the refinery products, and the least is that of fertilizers. Students, you should understand here that I'm giving you a mnemonic to learn them, because it has been asked many times in the examination. The mnemonic is friends CQ, as you have the word friends. So from friends, there is a weird mnemonic. Mnemonics are always weird. It's friends, FRENS. F stands for fertilizer, R for refinery products, E for electricity, N for natural gas, and S for steel. Friends CQ, C crude oil, coal, and cement. So friends Q, right? In the decreasing order of their weight, the highest is that of refinery products, and the least is that of fertilizers. Now, coming to the index of industrial production. Well, we know that, and we also discussed that the index of industrial production measures the changes in the volume of production of industrial products during a given period, right? We already discussed this, and the base year for IIP is, remember, 2011-12. Moving to the next slide. Well, the IIP is very important because the data is being used by the Ministry of Finance, RBI, in policy making process. It is also extremely relevant for the calculation of GDP, right? And this is the weightage. As you can see, the highest is that of refinery, and the least is that of fertilizer, 2.63%. I hope it is clear. Moving to the next news article on the screen. It talks about the Places of Worship Act 1991. Well, friends, you all know that in the recent controversy on Gyanvapi Mosque, this act surfaced the news media. It was being held that, and in fact, the act says that whatever mode of worship which existed during on 15th August 1947, that means at the time of independence, the same would be there, the same would carry on without any interruption, right? That means the identity of a religious place or the nature of the worship which existed at the time of independence will not be changed, and it would be same. So in this way, let's say if any place, religious place at the time of independence is being worshipped by any particular religious community, then the other religious community cannot claim their right of worship over that place, right? I hope you're getting my point. Now, but a petition, but there were exemptions given to the Places of Worship Act 1991, and the first exemption was Ayodhya case, right? The Ayodhya Ram Janmabhoomi case. The second is definitely the archaeological sites like Taj Mahal, etc. They are also not covered under the Places of Worship Act 1991. Well, a petition is being filed in the apex court, and you all will be knowing that a private member bill will also be tabled, introduced, to repeal Places of Worship Act. Now, the petition says that the law or the act is arbitrary and irrational because it has fixed a retrospective cutoff date. Getting my point? That means a back date, a retrospective cutoff date, and in this sense, it illegally bars Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, and Sikhs from approaching courts to reclaim their places of worship that were invaded and encroached upon by the barbaric invaders. As you all know, that even Gyan was a temple and it was being invaded and destroyed and converted into a mosque by Alauddin Khilji. So now it is being claimed that a shivling is being found there, and the Hindus claim that it should be a Hindu religious site. Getting my point. So, but the petitioner says that it is such an act it is arbitrary and irrational, right? So, so this is how it is. The Places of Worship Act we just understood, and we also made it. We also cleared the thing that the disputed side of Ayodhya it was exempted. Second, the ancient and historical monuments or the archaeological sites which are covered under Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Ruins Act 1958 are also excluded. Right. Now, recently in the Supreme Court in the Ayodhya judgment, 2019 Ayodhya verdict said that the Act of 1991 is is protects the secular tendencies, secular values of the Constitution and prohibits any retrogression. Moving to the next news article. Well, friends, a few days back there was a news which surfaced the media about the Kalakurchi violence. It was being it was being seen that a girl was being found dead in a school, and it was being alleged that it was a suicide, but the parents of the girl are denying the fact. And suddenly, the news broke into the social media, and people in the around thousands of people, gathered around the school. They blockaded the school. They burnt all the buses, the property. They vandalized everything, the furnitures, etc. And because of the death of the girl, and now the state government has have formed SIT or special investigation team, where it was being found that the media, the seven WhatsApp groups were being used to instigate the Kalupurchi violence, right? Where there were many people who got injured, and also there was a damage to man and property. So seven WhatsApp groups were being used to instigate Kalupurchi violence, and also many YouTube channels, Facebook channels, Twitter accounts are also under this scanner. So this is what happens, students. Definitely, media is a fourth pillar of democracy, but then it is if not being controlled and regulated, then it can be misused, and it may result into such violent activities, because because the people there don't have any idea that who the girl is. They're not related to the girl. They're not related to her family, her parents, but that they just got the medium to express their frustration, and they came and they vandalized the property, right? So all these media channels, etc., are under scanner, and the SIT has said that the WhatsApp groups were used to instigate the Kalakuchi violence, and now they are tracking the IP address, Internet Protocol address of the individuals concerned, and also to block their content. Right. So they have identified 31 Twitter handles, 37 Facebook accounts, and 63 YouTube channels. Right. So this is how it turned out. I hope it is clear. Moving to the next news article, to the editorial page. Well, student, this editorial, a beautiful editorial, and must be read by all the students. Yeah. Now, it talks about RTI, which is being deemed to be one of the top 5 laws of the world, the Right to Information Act 2005, which came into force on 15th October 2005. Right. So it is being deemed as one of the top 5 laws of the world, which gives a right to access information, and it is being regarded as a fundamental right under Article 21, which is right to liberty. That means if a person who is denied the access to information or democratic access to information, his right to life and liberty under Article 21 would be infringed. But even after such a robust act, we have seen several, deaths of the or murders of the RTI activists. So in this sense, if a person who wishes to, gain the access of the government, information, and he's denied, and in fact he's being killed. So ignoring the fact that RTI users are facing death for keeping democracy alive is a threat to democracy itself, right? So that means the RTI users are facing death for keeping the democracy alive, right? So this is the price that they get, to get democratic access to information. They are being rewarded with death. So it itself is a death of democracy. Now, RTI empowers us to participate in the policy making process by providing access to information, to make public authorities accountable and transparent, pursuing answers on the public funds, unearthing the corruption at all the levels from panchayat to parliament. So it is an example of a participatory democracy, a very well crafted act, no doubt about that. But then, since its implementation in the year 2005, there are more than 100 RTI activists across the country which have been killed, and several are being harassed on daily basis. Right. So in this sense, it is a death of to democracy. It is a threat to democracy and the democratic accountability. So therefore, we must have strong legal and institutional safeguards. Now, if we do a comparative analysis, we'll find that Bihar is the most dangerous state, and it has seen the highest number of RTI deaths. Remember, followed by Maharashtra. Now, it is the state's government's responsibility to provide the legal assistance, time-bound grievance redressal, compensation, and dignified access to justice to the families of those killed. Right, so this is the first step that which has to be done. Right, the state government concerned should provide the legal assistance and the compensation of the to the families of those family members who were killed. Recently, a public hearing in Patna was also being, or I mean, civil society organization organized a public hearing in Patna, where families of the whistleblowers, those who expose the fact from the government, disclosed that the whistleblowers had been working on issues of public importance and interest, exposing the irregularities and corruption, pursuing transparency in the functioning of the PDS, for example, Manrega, PDS, again, Anganwadi centers, housing schemes, illegally operating health clinics, and so on and so forth. Right. So they have all been, disclosing and whistleblowing about the malfunctioning in these schemes. Well, all the requested information by the whistleblowers should be made available, mandatorily available in public under Section 4 of the RTI Act. After all, the whistleblowers were performing their basic civic duty, right? And what is that? That of public vigilance. And this is something which the government should, should encourage. And in fact, they should do it themselves, and initiate timely action on. The law of action by the government and collusion of the police, because there is a close nexus between the police and the vested interests, and this deny, if not subvert, the justice. So therefore, we must create a social legal system that recognizes the RTI users under attack as human right defenders, and build a framework, that facilitate and protect them in their attempt to pursue issues of public interest. Right. So हमारे पास एक framework होना चाहिए. We should have a framework, and we should consider the IT activists as human right defenders, right? And we should have a social legal framework which should protect their rights. Otherwise, it would only be words, in the RTI legislation without, ringing hollow, right? So therefore, it should not be a toothless act, but it should given enough safeguard and a framework to actually, protect the whistleblowers. Well, what can we do? There are some suggestions which are being given here by Madan Lokur, who is the retired, former judge of the Supreme Court India, and now he's currently the judge of the Supreme Court of Fiji. The first is that the state governments must direct the law enforcement agencies to expeditiously and in a time-bound manner complete investigations in all cases where RTI users are harassed. Right? That means the state government with the help of the law enforcement agencies must, complete the investigations where the RTI users are harassed or possibly killed, and should provide adequate compensation to the victim's family. So this is the first thing which has to be done. The second thing, the state government must take immediate efforts to institutionalize the proactive disclosures of actionable information. Getting my point? Because the information requested by the murdered RTI users was information that should have been mandatorily disclosed in the public domain under Section 4 of RTI Act. But now there is a new change in the RTI rules. This says that if the applicant dies before the information is being disclosed by the public authority, then the case would be shut and no information would be given. Right. So this is dangerous. Right. So therefore, the information which is demanded by the murdered RTI user should have been mandatorily disclosed in the public domain under Section 4 of RTI Act, because now it is being closed, right? Now, even after his death, the information that he was seeking from the government should be disclosed and should be disclosed in the public domain, so that the people also would know that what information he was seeking, and in this way, they may held the government, any agency accountable, to his death. Therefore, the state governments must take immediate measures to institutionalize proactive disclosure of actionable information. Now, is this possible? Well, the states of Rajasthan and Karnataka has taken an action. In Rajasthan, for example, the Rajasthan government has come up with something called a Jan Suchna portal, right? And it leads in active disclosure of the information. Similarly, Karnataka has started Mahiti Kanaja. Mahiti Kanaja are outstanding examples of practical ways of mandatory disclosure, right? So you can always remember Mahiti Kanaja, Karnataka, and then Suchna Portal, Rajasthan. Exemplary, contribution in the disclosure of information. The third effort which we can do is that in all cases of threats, attacks, or killings of RTI users, the State Information Commission must immediately direct the relevant public authorities to disclose and publicize all the questions raised and the answers given to the user. Getting my point? So in all the cases of threats, attacks, or killings of RTI users, the State Information Commission must immediately direct the relevant public authorities, right, to disclose and publicize all the questions raised and answers given to the user, right? Now, giving wide publicity to such information may potentially act as a deterrent against attacks on RTI users, right? So, because when you make the information public, it may act as a deterrent against the attacks on RTI users, right? And any attack would invite even greater public scrutiny. So in this way, we can check such harassment of the RTI activists. Now, last, there is an urgent need to enact an effective legislation to protect the whistleblowers because we don't have a, although we do have a Whistleblower Act of 2014, but it is toothless. You know, unfortunately, to no avail. Right? It is an absolute vacuum. It doesn't have powers, and the act has not been notified. Right? So, therefore, an urgent need is to enact an effective legislation to protect the whistleblowers. And rightly so, in 2016, Supreme Court Justice T.S. Thakur and Justice E.K. Sikri came down heavily on the union government for its reluctance in notifying the Whistleblower Protection Act of 2014 because the government is, showing a reluctance in notifying the Whistleblower Protection Act, and unfortunately to no avail. Now, 8 years have passed since 2014, but the act has not been notified. Right? So, therefore, there is reform required in in Whistleblower Act. And in fact, the states of Bihar, Maharashtra, which have recorded the highest number of murders of RTA activists, must introduce their own mechanisms for protection of whistleblowers by enacting at least a state-level whistleblower protection law. Right. So this is all about this article, very highly important article which every student must understand. I hope it is clear. Moving to the next news, to explanation part. When RTI Act, which was passed in the year 2005, mandates the timely response to citizen requests for government information. For example, if you want to seek any information from the government authority, you would file a RTI to the PRO, right, public relation officer, or the assistant PRO, and he's duty bound to give that the information within 30 days, right? Getting my point. If the information is with regard to the violation of Article 21, etc., which is right to life and liberty, then the information must be supplied within 48 hours or 2 days. Right? Now, it was an initiative taken by the DOPT, Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances, and Pensions. Right? It provides RTI portal gateway. Now, whistleblower protection was diluted, so this is what we discussed. And RTI, doesn't keep the identity of applicant anonymous. So this is the major problem because the identity is revealed as soon as the RTI is filed, right? And the moment it is being filed, and let's say there's a whistleblower, then all would know who the person is, and there is always a threat on his life and liberty. The center is planning to impose new rules to the RTI act that will mean potential for threats and attack on the RTI activists. Right? अब जो नए rules है, according to the new rules, if an RTI applicant dies before the government sends the reply, तो यही हमने discuss किया था कि let's say RTI applicant ने application file करी and before the government sends the reply, the person dies. Right? Now the application will be closed and the information sought will not be provided. Right? So this is very dangerous, and this could potentially put several activists who use this power tool to expose corruption in threat. Right? So this is there. There are many other problems like the commission is understaffed, so on and so forth. We have discussed about whistleblowing, which is defined as an act of disclosing information by an employee or any concerned stakeholder about an illegal or unethical conduct within an organization. Right. So this is all about the same, and we have discussed this already. Well, moving to the next news article. Well, there was a news about Tunisia new constitution passed through referendum with 96%, 94% voting, although only 36% of the total voters, 36% of the people turned out for the voting. Out of them, 94% voted in favor of the new constitution. Now, this new constitution would make the system completely presidential. All the powers are being taken away from the parliament and the prime minister, and then now they are being resorted to the president, right? So that means president has now overwhelming powers, extensive powers, to the extent that he can even appoint the election commissioners, the Supreme Court judges, In this way, there is the independence of these institutions, which are very important to keep the democratic principles intact, is also threatened, right? So when the president is appointing, let's say, the judges on his own whims and fancies, and the election commissioner, then there is no point of having these institutions, right? So the point in question is at present is President Kais Saied, who has framed the new constitution. He was a law professor himself, and before turning a politician, and he got it a referendum, passed through referendum in Tunisia. Well, Tunisia is always known for the Jasmine Revolution or the Arab Spring, where the autocratic rule or the monarchical rule was being disbanded, was being uprooted by the democratic revolution, right? Now, but and it happened in the year 2011. So this brief experiment with the post-revolutionary parliamentary democracy has come to an end with the passage of this new constitution through referendum. Now, the president Kais Saied has also dethroned and have sacked the elected government of Prime Minister Hisham Mesheshi, and the majority political party, Irada, is also being disbanded. Now it would result into one-man rule, and no person can now question the president Kais Saied. As per the new constitution, he would remain president for life. You cannot remove him. And he has in fact fired many judges who were critical of him. He has seized the independent institutions like election commission and sidelined the many political parties, including the majority political party Inada. Right now, the ultimate authority to form governments. And now he would appoint the judges, the ministers. Although Tunisia was a shining example for a peaceful transition to democracy from dictatorship after the Arab Spring protests rocked many countries in West Asia and North Africa. And in this way, this event has taken the country back to the absolute presidency, which could slip into constitutional authoritarianism. Well, President Kais Saied was being elected as president in 2019, and he blamed the country's parliamentary system and the infighting among the political class for all the problems Tunisia faced. Because Tunisia has the highest number of COVID-19 registered deaths in the world, it was reeling into the economic crisis, and therefore Said, and it was all during Said's time. But President Kais Saied blames it on the parliamentary system, and he says that it is the reason why I have disbanded the parliamentary system. So this is all about this article. Very, very important, and strong probability of it being asked in the examination. Moving ahead, about Arab Spring. It was a wave of anti-government protests to uproot the authoritarian regime. It began in Tunisia, right? So there was a hawker, and he actually turned into uh, this revolt, also called the Jasmine Revolution, which spread like a wildfire to 5 other countries, the North African countries of Libya, Yemen, Middle East country, Egypt, Bahrain, Syria, so on and so forth, where the regimes were overthrown, or major uprisings or social violence such as riots, civil wars, mass murdering, or insurgencies occurred. The Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia, and a self-immolation of Mohammed Bouazizi, a 26-year-old street vendor protesting his treatment by the local officials. And this protest, this objection sparked the first protest in the central Tunisia in December 2010. And this actually led to the uprooting of the authoritarian regime, also called as Jasmine Revolution or Arab Spring. So in 2011, the Tunisians voted in free election to elect the members of a council tasked with drafting a new constitution. So this is Arab Spring, and these were the areas which all had the authoritarian regimes, but Arab Spring led to the transition to democracy. This is the geographical location of Tunisia, its capital Tunis, the northern African nation. Let's move to the next news article. Now, Prime Minister Modi has unveiled India's first global bullion exchange. India's first global bullion exchange, and the move could lead to standard gold pricing in the country. Right now, This is for the first time a global bullion exchange, uh, has been formed, right? Now, India International Bullion Exchange is the first in the country, and it is being founded in Gandhinagar, the gift city, right? So it would set the standard for the gold pricing in the country, and in fact, it is world's second biggest consumer of, because India is the world's second biggest consumer of gold, and the move would actually, bring more transparency to the market for the precious metal. Right. So very important. They may ask you that where it is being formed. So it is Gandhinagar's gift city. Now it could lead to standard gold pricing in the country and make it easier for small bullion dealers and jewelers to trade in the precious metal. Right. So we must understand that India is this world's second largest consumer of the gold, and the leading importer of the metal, and it has imported, in fact, in 2021 around 1,000 tons of gold, up from 430 tons a year ago. So therefore, it is very, very, very important, right? A very good initiative, and in fact, Prime Minister also laid the foundation stone of the headquarter building of the IFSCA, which is International Financial Services Centers Authority, because today finance and technology are interrelated, they are linked to each other, right? So therefore, an important initiative. We must understand what is international bullion exchange. Now, international bullion exchange will facilitate efficient price discovery and act as a secondary market with the assurance of responsible sourcing and quality, right? Apart from giving impetus to the financialization of gold in India, and it would be set up in the gift city of Gandhinagar, which will offer diversified portfolio of products and technology services at a cost which is far more competitive than the Indian exchanges. Right? And who will regulate IIBX? Now, IIBX is India's international bullion exchange, right? India's international bullion exchange, and it will be regulated by IFSCA. IFSCA is International Financial Services Center Authority. International Financial Services Center Authority. And now, what is bullion? Now, bullion refers to physical gold and silver of high purity, right? And that is often kept in the form of bars, ingots, or coins. Right? So, in this way, the bullion can sometimes be considered legal tender and is often held as reserves by central banks or held by the institutional investors. Right. So in this way, the International Bullion Exchange or India's International Bullion Exchange, or IIBX, shall be the gateway for bullion imports into India, wherein all the bullion imports for domestic consumption shall be channelized through the exchange. Right. So this is all about this. Now, as per the guidelines, the banks may allow the qualified jewelers to remit advance payments for 11 days for import of gold through IIBX. Now, about IFSCA, which would be the regulator for IIBX. Right? Now, it is also headquartered at Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and it will regulate the financial products such as securities, deposits, or contracts of insurance, financial services, and financial institutions, which have been previously approved by any appropriate regulator such as RBI, SEBI, so on and so forth. Right. So, as far as the members or the composition of IFCA is concerned, it would include 9 members appointed by the central government, and they will include chairperson of the authority, a member each from RBI, SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA, and 2 members from the Ministry of Finance. Right. So this is how it will work. Right. So just hold on. This is how. Yeah. So IFSCA is the International Financial Center Authority and recently established a new permissive regulatory framework in the gift, right? So an important article, you should actually go through it exhaustively. Right? So about Chabahar Port, and Hawaii Jayashankar, Minister of External Affairs, is pushing for Chabahar Port. Right? Now recently there was a meeting for the SCO foreign ministers at Tashkent. Right? And you all know SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which has 8 countries like Russia, China, the Central Asian countries of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, India, and Pakistan. Right. So we have discussed in our previous session also that Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, China, Russia, Pakistan, India are its members. And at present, there are four observer states like Afghanistan, Iran, Belarus, and Mongolia. Now, in the next summit of SCO or Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is scheduled at Samarkand, right? Samarkand in Kazakhstan, correct. So here the next summit is being scheduled, and it is being believed that Iran and Belarus would join as a full-time members, right? And there is strong possibility that Iran would 100% become a SCO member in the Samarkand summit, right? Now, this organization came into the year 2001, and at that time it was, it had five members: Russia, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and then Uzbekistan also joined it, right? So, so in this way, Iran would be the new member of the grouping, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Well, the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said that India would be pushing for investment in the Chabahar port to be conduit for trade to Central Asia, right? Chabahar port in Iran, where which is a route for India to access these Central Asian countries, right? Mr. Jaishankar also highlighted the assistance to the Afghanistan, and reiterated the India's position on Afghanistan and highlighted our humanitarian support on wheat, medicine, vaccines, and clothing. Right. So the Mr. Jaishankar has underlined that Iran's Chabahar port has the potential for SEO economic future because the next year, India would be taking over SEO presidency. Very important, very important takeaway, students. India would become the president of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization for the next year, and this would give the fullest support, and India would give its fullest support for the success of Samarkand summit. Right? So therefore, this article is important. He talked about zero tolerance on terrorism, reforms in the multilateralism system, and also the problems which are being faced because of the Ukraine conflict, the energy prices, and the food prices. Right. I hope it's clear. So, guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Do press the bell icon for regular updates. Like, comment, and share. Post any question or query in the comment box, and we'll be more than happy to answer all your queries. Today, educator Mr. Rosling